is going to be presenting her presentation on intersectionality. This is a workshop that she developed for some of the online camps this summer, and features a game that she created to introduce the idea of intersectionality and justice to young people, but it also works for, well, believers of any age. And so we're looking forward to having this opportunity with Jennifer, and looking forward to being able to play this game with her and all of the ways that she'll be able to share such an important well, wonderful topic with us. So Jennifer, with that, I'm happy to turn it over to you. One quick word before that, if folks could use that chat feature to go ahead and say a word of introduction about who you are and where you're coming from. We would love to have that registered here with us, and are really grateful that you're here. All right, Jennifer, over to you.
Yes, so we're gonna get started here momentarily. We'll just wait like 2 more minutes. Is that good?
Absolutely. Give folks a chance to get here into the room with us. Excited to see some familiar faces who were here with us for the workshop yesterday, as well as some new names that are in the Zoom room today. If you didn't get a chance to see the Meet the Interns session that we had yesterday, that has been saved to our Facebook page as well as DPF's YouTube channel, and is also now linked onto DPF's Passing the Peace webpage as well. It was a wonderful chance to get to know these peace interns a little bit. They will be leading the sessions each day going forward during Passing the Peace. So today we have Jennifer, who's going to be doing intersectionality. Tomorrow, Raphael and Wendy will be sharing their workshop that they developed, that they've used for several different regions this summer, on pride. On Monday, Wendy's going to be leading, along with Jennifer, an eco-justice workshop that they've been working on for you all. And then on Tuesday, we'll have the world premiere of the Choose Your Own Adventure Anti-Oppression Bible Study that the Peace Interns worked with this summer in collaboration with Reverend April Johnson, our Minister of Reconciliation for the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. It's going to be great every single day. And each chance we'll be recording those and making sure that we have them available for anybody who maybe can't make it to the individual sessions, but still wants to know what's been going on, and be able to take advantage of these wonderful resources that the Peace Interns have been able to put together for us this summer.
And Brian, could you possibly give me screen sharing?
I can, absolutely. I am going to switch off of my share, and let's get you set up, Jennifer.
On this one. Hello, can you all still see me and hear me? Awesome. Thank you so much for coming to the second session, but kind of like the first one led by a DPF intern. And I'm really excited to kind of share a little bit about social justice and, more importantly, intersectionality with all of you. Intersectionality has been something that's been really big for us. And Wendy and I have had many conversations this summer about intersectionality and the crossover between different social justice movements. So hopefully we can kind of add you all to the conversation. So the first thing before we get started, I don't know if it's going to take 90 minutes. I know I said it's going to be 90, but for the time that we have together, typically we try to make a covenant, but in exchange of the covenant, I want to just kind of have a poem. So I was introduced to this poem through my Explore year by my spiritual companion, and I was wondering if someone would like to volunteer to read it.
I'll read it if you still need a volunteer.
Yes, that would be awesome. Thank you, Ms. Kim.
Okay. An Invitation to Brave Space by Mickey Scott Bay Jones. Together we will create brave space, because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars and we have all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So like I said, in place of a covenant, I like to put this because the idea of a safe space is not really there, right? Because if it's safe, you are more likely to be quiet. But I invite all of you to join in this brave space. Please feel free to share your voice. And at the end, the new activity that I invented or created this summer, I'm really gonna need y'all voice, and we're gonna have to work together because teamwork makes the dream work, or it's gonna crash and burn real quick. So I'm really excited to work alongside you all. So before we begin, I want to know a little bit about you, but I want even more so you to know more about you. And I think the best way to do that is through I am poems. So today you were asked to bring a sheet of paper. Copy paper works perfectly for this, as well as color pencils or pens. So on one side of this, I just want to give us a few moments to write I am poems. And I will say this because I do not plagiarize. I totally stole this idea from Leanne Stump on the North California and Nevada region. So I'm going to give her props. So a little bit about I am poems. You probably have wrote one before, maybe when you were younger, but we're always children because we're children of God. So an I am poem is written by you, about you. The I am poem states who you are and what makes your identity. The I am poem expresses the way you feel, the hopes, what you think, dream, and enjoy. The lines in each poem begin the same way, similarly. So I am, I wonder, I feel, I think, and so forth. Play with it as much as you want. The only criteria is that the first line and last line of your poem has to be I am. And it can be as long or as short as you want it. So I'm going to give you all a few minutes to do this. And then we'll come back, and I hope to get everyone or a few people to share at least one line of your poem that really stands out for you and that you really want us to know about you. So I'm thinking like 7 to 8 minutes. And if you have any questions, feel free to just put them in the chat. Let's do about 2 more minutes. Okay. When you can find a good stopping place, we will move on. Awesome. So as I forewarned, I'm going to ask for people to just share one line from their I am poems. So you can unmute yourself and speak, or you can write in the chat. That's also an option. You're not limited.
I'd like to say, Jennifer, I like how you embellished and gave us more ideas. This is not what I did, so she made this her own activity. I would read, one who tries to feel the joys and pains of others.
This is Nance. I said, I'm oblivious to much of the world, even though some would call me a news junkie.
Jennifer, I had two that kind of built off of each other, so I'm going to share both of them. I feel hopeful on my best days, followed by, I wish those best days came along a little more frequently.
Jennifer, thank you. I'm glad you gave us some room. I kept doing kind of I am and what's the second part of that. So I'm going to share one of those. I am a child of God and I open my eyes wide to see God's children everywhere.
Awesome.
Mine kind of got separated in the chat. It is, I am a woman with love in her heart for everyone who needs it, with scars on her heart from loving too much. I am a woman.
Yes.
A couple of my lines are, I am a child of God. I wonder if I am good enough. I hope I keep learning and growing.
So maybe one more. So one of the ones that I wrote, I said, I feel stuck, but when I feel stuck, I know I can and will persevere on. Our identities are pretty important to who we are and what we believe in our values, because the perspectives that we get are completely different. And so knowing that, we end up having some issues, or we run into some issues, and these issues kind of build upon, and more than one person typically has these issues. And so then we start getting into what we consider social justice or social justice movements. So if someone would share, I asked this of the kids, that's why I was like, y'all have to, I really want y'all to share now. When was the time you stood up for someone else? So if you can just think about that. I know that's a kind of a loaded question.
Right now, I'm the primary caregiver for my husband. And so most of the times that recently that I've stood up for someone else that as his case manager, I have to stand up for him when doctors are not talking to each other, or when they're not paying attention to certain symptoms, or when they didn't look at the information that they told me to get before the appointment, all that kind of stuff.
Awesome, thank you. Maybe one more person, a time you stood up for someone. Feel free to humble brag. Like, I'm all about the humble brag.
I can talk about a time at church camp when a little kid needed someone to stand up for him. He was having difficulties and being bullied, and we took him aside, figured out the problem, took it to the whole group, and things were hopefully righted again.
Awesome. And I bet he's really excited that you stood up for him. So the next question. A time someone stood up for you. How did it make you feel?
Hi, it's Susan from Orange, California, and thank you for doing this work and bringing it to us. I was going to say a time when my husband stood up for me in relation to family members. Was very poignant. It was, as for me, most having other people stand up for me can be a little embarrassing. in one way, and yet makes you stronger in another.
Well said. I might be stealing that one too. But
I guess I can give another church camp example for me. A time when Mary Jacobs right over there stood up for me. I've never forgotten. We were having really difficult times, and we had to go to parents and to the pastor to talk about a child's situation. And Mary was by my side and went with us, and it was extremely valuable discussions with the parents and the pastor, and we really worked hard and worked through a really tough situation.
awesome. That's amazing. So I want to move on just a little bit and say, what is social justice? And probably more important, what is social justice to you? So we get like maybe 3 people to share here. And I'll give you the actual definition of social justice. Ooh.
I think for me, it's doing things that allow everyone to feel like a welcome and valued part of society, especially people who have been undervalued and devalued throughout history. So there's an element of like righting wrongs that have been done, as well as creating conditions for everyone to thrive.
Awesome, thank you. So some of the things that I pulled out is, welcoming all people kind of theme, and then righting wrongs, and then making sure everyone, I think you said it best, everyone thrives.
Mm-hmm.
There's a time to survive and there's a time to thrive. In the chat, Nancy said, we know that God requires justice. What we don't know is what God might see as social justice. That's true, right? Because social justice can mean different things to different people. That is a deep conversation. Maybe next summer. We'll have that conversation next summer. Maybe one more person. Hopefully a DPF person.
I'll share mine. Working in community to bring about the equity, dignity, and welfare of marginalized and disregarded people, and you might add, and creation, a bringing of God's shalom, where everyone thrives.
Once again, well said. Wow. Merriam-Webster definition of social justice. I actually thought it was crazy. It was really short. It says justice in terms of distribution of wealth, opportunity, and privilege within society. I have a small problem with that. Does anyone else have a problem with that? Because I think it doesn't define what society is. And sometimes we feel our society, our community is smaller than it actually is, when really our community is big, it's the world. And it's just human nature to want to exclude people. So I feel like you gotta be a little bit more specific there. So there's a lot that we need to do, right? Because our community is big. There's a lot of issues. I always joked, I was like, Achilles had it really good. He only had one weakness, one issue. But as humans, we have so many interlapping issues because we have so many identities. So that's where we get intersectionality. And I want to just kind of go through what do people know about intersectionality? See where the room is. Accordingly, I know all of you are smart, so probably already know all this. But
I guess for me, it's like what we bring with us when we come together, and what I recognize in you that's different from what's in me, but we can still interact in a social way, and what we bring to the coming together. And some of it is visual. A lot of it may be what we carry inside of us. And so you wouldn't know unless you speak and interact.
yes. And it's so true, because I think one of the biggest things, especially now that is being preached, is that silence is violence. So one of my last years of college, even though I majored in chemistry, I minored in creative writing. And I spent a whole semester thinking about the difference between human beings and animals. And it was in the context of like suicide. But one of the other things that just kind of comes to mind is that when we talk about the issues, other animals don't have this problem, right? We do as humans. And I'm always reminded, with great power comes great responsibility. So we have to know, we have to be educated, speak up, and continue to work together as community to solve these problems. And I mean, other animals, a goldfish don't get to do that. We do. So the definition of intersectionality: the interconnected nature of social categories, such as race, class, and gender, as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. That's a mouthful. But that makes sense, because when I introduce myself, right, I don't just say I'm African American or I'm a female. I'm like, I'm an African American female. And that holds such a different importance and aurora around it than both of them by themselves. And as much as I can probably explain it, the person who could probably explain it better is the person who came up with the word. So we are going to learn about what intersectionality is from the kids' perspective.
There's supposed to be audio with this video.
Yes.
Can't hear any.
Let's see. Do you hear it now? No.
When you share your screen, there's a little thing at the top that you have to, a little drop down, you have to click to share your sound, to share computer sound.
Okay. Oh.
It's like on a little toolbar that's in the center, kind of.
Yes. Okay. So this computer is not letting me. Brian, if I send you this PowerPoint, could you share it?
Yes, yeah, I think so.
Okay.
You might have to reinstall me as the host for the meeting, but we can totally make that happen.
Further, small technical difficulties. Sent your way.
Cool, I've got it. I'm opening it now. There we go. So then, Jennifer, if you could pull open the participants menu on your Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And then under more, you can switch me back to the host and then I can run it from there. This, my friends, is what happens when you have a DPF mission director who is so afraid of people Zoom bombing his peace interns that we lock down all of the share settings so that nobody can jump in and use their screen and do malicious things in the midst of what we're up to.
Okay.
But it does mean that sometimes it's a little bit harder to do some of the sharing pieces. Okay, yep, I am host again now. Thank you, Jennifer. Let me get that share screen going for us. There we are. And Jennifer, am I on the right slide?
Yes.
Okay.
You just click the video.
Okay.
Intersectionality. Have you heard this word before? Even if you have, you might not know what it means. Let's take a look at it. The first part's easy enough. Intersection.
Oh, my fault. Wrong button.
Intersectionality. Have you heard this word before? Even if you have, you might not know what it means. Let's take a look at it. The first part's easy enough. Intersection. A place where things come together. Intersectionality refers to the reality that we all have multiple identities that intersect to make us who we are. It also gives us a way to talk about oppressions and privileges that overlap and reinforce each other. This term dates back to the 1980s and legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw. She noticed that we didn't have an effective way to talk about how the experiences of Black women are different from the experiences of Black men and of white women. How? Black women endure both gender discrimination and racial discrimination. Over the last 30 years, scholars, educators, and activists have expanded the use of the word intersectionality to talk about identities beyond race and gender. Let's look at a few examples. Jerry has a disability, and his family lives below the poverty line. He is the oldest of 10, which requires him to do a lot of caregiving and sometimes keeps him out of school. No one in the school counseling office has talked to Jerry or his parents about his plans for after graduation. He has applied for several jobs, but never gets called back. Fatima is Muslim and recently came to the United States from Somalia. She finds that many people at her school make assumptions about her values and abilities before they speak to her. Many of her classmates think she shouldn't be at their school at all. Greta comes from an affluent family. Both her parents and grandparents went to college, and her father owns a successful business. She doesn't think about her identity very often, but she does think of herself as someone who will go to college and get a good job once she graduates. Think about Greta's situation as opposed to Fatima's or Jerry's. Fatima and Jerry are members of marginalized groups. They don't get to choose whether or not to think about their identities. Greta, on the other hand, can ignore intersectionality if she wants to. Life isn't the same for everyone, even for people who share identity characteristics. By adopting an intersectional lens, we have a better opportunity to understand why and to change the institutions that help and harm us based on who we are. Want to learn more? Read our story, Teaching at the Intersections, in the summer 2016 issue of Teaching Tolerance magazine.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. You want to move to the next slide?
Absolutely.
So as the video says, we have to have an intersectional lens. We have to realize that multiple identities make up a person and that multiple identities make up a social justice movement. And sometimes it's the best way to do that is to have it laid out in front of us, to see it visually. And so I have created what I call the connection game. And to start, we will need, click, to know what is social justice movement you're passionate about or want to know about. So just throw out some social justice movements and I'm going to make a list.
Racism.
LGBTQ rights.
Voting rights.
Ageism.
Prison reform.
Environmentalism.
Immigration issues.
Healthcare.
Yeah.
I'm going to say disability rights. Maybe we can get one more.
Education.
Awesome, thank you. So if you want to turn over your sheet of paper, we're going to get started on this game. So the way the game works is we'll start with 2 social justice issues. And we have to find a way to connect them. And we can connect them by experiences, TV shows, music, movies, anything that can do with both of them. So we got to start with 2. So someone wants to pick 1 or 2 of them to start with?
Racism.
What did you say? I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
I think I heard racism, Jennifer.
Okay. So 1 would be racism, and we need another one.
Education.
Education. So what this could possibly start looking like is that, is them both being written out, and we have to make the connection. So anyone know of an experience or a movie or a TV show that deals with both racism and education?
Well, this isn't really one specific thing or a movie or TV show, but like the issue of students of color getting suspended more frequently than white students.
Yes. So that would be the experience. So the connection we're having is experience of minority students getting expelled more than their white counterparts.
To think about COVID, is that students of color sometimes and students that are poor have less access to resources to do at-home learning. I mean, just the whole situation right now of inequity of resources in relation to poor and students of color.
Awesome. So there we have kind of like 2 ways we can make that connection. You can write either both or either one. And we need another social justice issue.
Prison reform.
Prison reform. So we can either make a connection of prison reform to racism, or we can make a connection to prison reform and education. And you get to choose.
Racism and education, and can't even think of the name of the movie now, and I just saw it. Oh, Just Mercy.
Awesome. Yes, that's a great connection. So I am kind of obsessed right now with Adam Ruins Everything. And last night I got to Adam Ruins the prison system. And one of the things that I learned is that the number of college programs in prisons went from like 1,200,000 to about 12 and over about a 10-year period. So we have one connection off of racism. We have one on prison reform. And also if you just have one, you can write either one of those down. We need another social justice movement.
Disability rights.
Disability rights. So we can make a connection of disability rights from racism, education, or prison reform.
I think sometimes people who have a disability are seen automatically as someone of lower class. So it would have to do with the social justice issue of class.
Yes, and maybe even education, like thinking that they're not smart enough to learn, and they are.
Or accommodations aren't always made for those with disability in education.
True, yes.
Especially right now with the online classes, and some disabilities need that one-on-one experience. So it's a struggle right now during COVID to find that.
Mm-hmm. So we've made a connection of education to disability. Did anyone make a connection of racism to disability? Can anyone think of one?
When I was a kid growing up in Colorado, all kids who came into the school system and could not speak English were put in the lowest track as if they would never be able to learn much. And so that was a kind of racism, assuming lack of ability to learn.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. That actually reminded me, if I can get a little personal, that actually kind of happened to me. So when my family was displaced because of Hurricane Katrina, we went to Houston, and all the Houston public school systems automatically put like New Orleans students in like the remedial lower class classes because they were like, oh, New Orleans education score is horrible. Apparently they didn't learn anything. And my mom was like, my child is a straight A student for a reason. She literally grew up on a college campus. She's that good. And so the next thing they did, they were like, oh, New Orleans students' grades are not going to be counted in our data for the year. And it just so happens that I scored the highest in reading and math in my whole school. And like that just got erased. Like no one will ever know that. That just reminded me of that. What about prison reform and disability rights? Did anyone make a connection there? So the connection I made, because that's the way I went, was prison reform to disability, is people with mental illnesses are more likely to actually be in prison than actually go get like the hospitalization that they need. Thank you, Orange is the New Black, for teaching me that. So we need one more. We need another one. Let's do maybe 3 more. And it doesn't have to be one that we came up with earlier. It can be a new one that may have come to your mind.
What about employment?
Like employment opportunities?
Yeah.
Great, that's a good one. So employment opportunities. So we can make a connection between employment opportunities and racism, or employment opportunities and education, or employment opportunities and prison reform, or employment opportunities and disability rights. Whew, this is gonna get a lot longer.
Yeah.
So just pick one to make the connection through.
Well, I work in the field of employment placement, and it's very, very difficult for people with a prison record, especially a felony, to be able to obtain employment. Even, you know, they've served their time, they've done what they need to do, and there are so few employers that will hire them.
And there's another side to that too. It's housing opportunities. If they have a record, especially in the state of Arizona, you can't get an apartment, you can't get a job, and therefore we have so many out on the streets that are homeless because of our system. I've learned a lot. My daughter's the executive director of the Arizona Faith Network, and all of these things are what she deals with all the time. So I'm learning a lot through her.
That's amazing. Yeah, they're just so all interconnected that you almost have to deal with all of them if you want to deal with the problem. So I made that connection with prison reform to employment opportunities, and I made the connection of like Ban the Box, which is a social justice movement that I know is happening. That applications can ask, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Did anyone make another connection from employment opportunities to maybe something else?
So there's this amazing organization in Nashville, Tennessee, that when I was in seminary 1,000,000 years ago, I got the opportunity to work with, and they have grown and grown and grown since then. It's called Thistle Farms, which grew out of the recognition that for folks who were coming out of prison, they often weren't going to get employment opportunities. Noticed that the women, especially who were coming from prison, particularly Black women, also had not had the opportunities while in the prison system to be able to get GEDs and education and things to move forward. And so they created this all-inclusive process that would be temporary housing for the women, that would be job training, as well as GED training that came in as a part of it. At first, they were making like hand soaps and lotions. And so people could then have something to put onto their resume. Yeah, hey, I've been a manager at Thistle Farms for the last year, and in that time, I've gotten my GED. Now they have a scratch kitchen that they run. They've got a couple of coffee shops, and every place is fully run and fully employed by folks who have been going through this program, and by the connections that they've made there. So Thistle Farms is the name of it. It's one of my very favorite places, and ties in about 6 different ways on the map that we have right now.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's so true. That's so good. That I'm one of those people, like, you say something and that reminds me. Of course, I know all of you are going to go visit New Orleans sometime soon, especially once COVID is over. And there's actually a restaurant that all they do is actually hire marginalized groups to work the restaurant. And it's completely ran by the employers. And they get paid like an actual livable wage. I think the starting salary there right now is like $12, $13 an hour, which is a lot better than the $7.25 that most other places would try to kind of push. Awesome. Yeah, and thank you for like that action step. There's so many of those organizations out there. Like a quick Google search will get you there, and you can definitely help out. Do we have another social justice issue someone wants to put forth?
We mentioned voting rights earlier. We could connect that one in.
Yes, so let's try to find a connection to voting rights. So from any of the other ones, you can do voting rights.
Definitely racism.
You want to expand on that?
Well, not necessarily having as easy an access getting to the polls, gerrymandering of districts, when they were talking about requiring extra kinds of proof of who you were and everything. And I think that's also hard for like homeless people, you know, who don't have an address.
Yes. So there's that connection with racism. Sure, please go.
The issue that many people, when they are released from prison, no longer are given the right to vote, and the need to look at how they need to be fully reintegrated into as a citizen. So
right.
Awesome. Yeah, that's so true. All right. Was someone else going? Oh,
yeah, with disability rights, there's the accessibility of polls, and then efforts to make mail-in voting more difficult, that then makes it more difficult for people with disabilities to exercise their right to vote.
Thank you. Wow, I did not know that. So I'm learning something new. Thank you.
For folks who might have missed the story, about 2 weeks ago, my man LeBron James, love LeBron James, huge NBA fan. He's formed an organization called More Than a Vote that is dealing with voting rights, particularly following prison reform. Folks may have remembered the story from 2 years ago where Florida had a ballot initiative that re-enfranchised all of the felons in the state, only for the elected officials in Florida to say, well, we're going to put all of these other restrictions on them, and one of them is forcing them to have paid all of their fees and fines, even if they didn't know what the fees and fines were, in order to get their voting rights back. So this organization that LeBron James is putting together, has been fundraising for, and has put a significant amount of his own money behind, is going to pay those fees for folks. They announced that they have a $100,000 pool already, and he assumes they'll be able to double it and then double it again to be able to make sure that they can remove as many obstacles as possible for folks who have, well, need that right to vote again.
Thank you for sharing that. There's so much good work going.
On that same note, Stacey Abrams has at least 3 organizations under her belt. And somewhere here, I might be able to find it. Fair Fight, Fair Count, and Southern Economic Advancement, something along that line. That each one is just a little bit, tweaks it a little bit different, but it's getting people of color to the polls or get theirs counted. Once they've sent them in, they may be not counted for various, in my opinion, stupid reasons. They say the signatures don't match up, or mine doesn't match, as she says, from one store to another. So why would anybody's signature? It's just ridiculous things like that. So.
Yeah. Just makes your blood boil a little bit more, right?
I'll tell you what they did in Oklahoma. They put 2 sheets of completely contradictory information about how to fill it out correctly. And so a lot of people are going to be confused. And one of the things, for example, says attach, and it doesn't say whether to attach with paperclip, staple, or tape. And it turns out a paperclip will get them to throw away your vote. And so it's really a pitiful situation. They have one more way of messing up mail-in voting.
Stacey Abrams even says that her last, I guess it would have been the primary, she always has gotten mail-in ballots. Hers came sealed already for the return envelope. So it negated it. And she had to end up going in anyway to vote. Some people, that's easier to do than others.
Well, y'all are scaring me a little bit because I got to vote in Virginia. So the only way I'm going to vote is if it's like mail-in. I might be going on a 14-hour trip a little sooner than I thought. Let's do one more connection. Anyone wants to raise a social justice movement or issue up?
About the LGBT movement.
That's a great one. Yeah, so LGBTQ plus, we can connect it any which way.
Healthcare is awful, or can be awful for particularly our trans.
Right.
Misunderstood, not understood, not wanting to be helpful. I think we need to educate our medical field a lot more than we do along those lines.
Unfortunately, some religious people are a big part of the problem. Just for example, with babies born intersex, although some Christians will say things like God doesn't make junk when it comes to Down syndrome babies, when it comes to intersex babies, they are considered junk that need to be fixed. So it's a real problem because some people think that God made the babies one way or the other, and they don't understand that actually physicians may have chosen which was the easier cosmetic surgery, and without thinking about all the other parts of a person that make up a sexual or gender identity. So in other words, they're saying God cannot be complex, which I do not believe is true.
Preach, Nance, preach.
I was going to church today, but here we are. Yeah, and I think it comes down to something of knowledge, right? And one of my teachers said it so perfectly, and it stuck with me forever. She said, how privileged do you have to be to stay ignorant? I was like, because knowledge is right there. It's so easily accessible at this point that you're not looking for it. You're not wanting to understand other people and other perspectives. And that's just limiting to self. So what I did was I connected LGBTQ to employment opportunities in a way I said was workplace discrimination. Typically when they find out you are part of the community, you're less likely to get hired or more likely to get fired. And then I connected LGBT to healthcare, as was described. And then I actually connected healthcare back to racism with a medical apartheid. And the fact that like African-American women are not taken seriously when we go to the hospital. And I have like a testimony about that, but that's for another day. I would love to see everyone's spider web, because this is definitely a spider web. Oh, wow. What others? Well, even so, that was amazing and a great conversation. One of the things I wanted to point out is, we touched on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on here, but through conversation, what came up was employment opportunities, housing rights, homelessness, social economic discrepancies, politics. There was so many other things, and it's really like we can't talk about one without talking about all of them. Brian, could you? So in conclusion, like I said, you can't talk about one while talking about the other. So, click, Brian. When you shine your light somewhere, you shine your light everywhere. And that is kind of like the take-home message I would hope all of you can put in your heart, right? Because it's hard. Like I want to solve it all. I'm a fixer. I want to fix it all. And sometimes I get overwhelmed. But then I remember, okay, Jennifer, this year your thing is racism and Black Lives Matter movement. Just stick with that and you're going to do it all. So thank you all for this. And I now want to just take maybe 10 minutes to pray about it. And while we pray, I'm going to introduce a new prayer technique. Brian, can you? Called praying in color. So this technique was developed, you can just pull up all the things on the slide there. Was created by Sybil Macbeth. She wrote a book about it just a few years ago. It's a pretty new thing. Once again, learned this from my spiritual companion, Reduce, Reuse, Recycle, even with knowledge. And so the way you pray in color, and if you have a new sheet of paper or you can find space on your old one, I'm just using the back of one of my sheets. You just can place a word in the middle. So I invite you to place a social justice movement that you're passionate about or that you feel needs prayer, and write that in the middle. And I have colored pencils, so hopefully you got colors too. If I was at my own house, I would not have colored pencils. So I'm really glad I'm here with my kids and nephews. And from there, you can doodle, you can draw around it. There's a little example of what praying color might look like if you're praying for the love of God. So while you're coloring and doodling, kind of be in prayer and be in a moment of stillness. And that could be you talking with God, and maybe you run out of words to say. And so just be there in the quietness, continually doing. And if something comes up, bring it to him because God is always listening. So let's give it like 5 minutes. So let's do one more minute. Thank you. I hope everyone enjoyed that time of prayer. I'm a doodler and colorer, so it's just amazing to kind of keep myself focused and grounded in a creative way with God, because our God is a God of creativity, is he not? So thank you all for coming this evening and sharing your day with me. I am honored that you have come. We have, as Brian mentioned, other workshops every day. So hopefully we will see you soon until we meet again. Go in peace and not in pieces. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Our next session for Passing the Peace
Thank
will
you.
be Sunday evening, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, where we'll be hearing from Raphael and Wendy about pride. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful session. You'll be getting the email with the links and any of the materials that you'll need ahead of that coming from me shortly. Thank you, everyone. Blessings and peace. And thank you, Jennifer. Big hand. Well done. Grateful for you.
Thank you all for bearing with me. You all guys are awesome. You all were awesome. I gotta work on my microaggressions here.